on Georgia Tech down in Atlanta. Jay, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. Happy New Year. How are things going?
Yeah, Happy New Year, Steve, Paulie. Happy that we're in conference play here in the ACC, and excited to get to call Syracuse for the first time this season tonight.
What are the big storylines heading into tonight? I mean, the obvious ones around here, Nathan George and Ibrahim Soiree returning to Georgia Tech, certainly one of them. Adrian Autry trying to get this team to the NCAA tournament. They're coming off a loss, so on and so forth. As you look at it, covering both teams for this game tonight, what is the biggest storyline in your mind?
I think how important this game is, even though I just mentioned it's early in ACC play, it's getting late quickly for both of these teams. And I think if you look at it from Georgia Tech's perspective, you're at home and you feel like this is a game you could and should win. And I know Syracuse fans are thinking this is one they have to win, and yet one team is going to lose it. So I do think if you look at the month of January for both of these teams, that's going to determine if February and March is meaningful. And I know that's been the word tossed around Syracuse is meaningful games in March. Well, if you want meaningful games in March, you have to win games like tonight.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that for Syracuse, that they have to hold serve in a way for these next however many games, 4, 5, 6, whatever you want to include in this stretch. They've got Georgia Tech, Pitt, Florida State, BC. Virginia Tech and Miami are better teams. They face those two after this 4-game stretch. It feels like they need to kind of hold serve to set the stage for what could be a very important month of February. I know you've watched a lot of Syracuse basketball this year and over the course of the last several years. What do you make of this particular Adrian Autry coach team now in his third year? What do you make of this group that you've seen?
It's the best team he's had defensively. I do think defensively they give themselves a chance to win every time they take the floor. I think you saw that against Houston, one of the best teams in all of college basketball, and their defense kept them in that game. It's why they beat Tennessee, right? That was a grinded out defensive win. I think offensively they have the talent. It just does not come together. You turn on the tape and it's a lot of individuals trying to make plays, and I don't see the cohesion offensively, using all 5 guys effectively, moving without the ball. I think Donnie Freeman coming back to the lineup will help that. Certainly his production was huge in his return against Clemson, but now how's everybody going to play with him and not just watch him?
Along those lines, you talk about offense. Adrian Autry has said that he wants to improve their assist numbers. They've had some struggles on the offensive end. How do they go about doing that, right? It's easier said than done. As you look at this team from the outside looking in, how do you think they go about it, improving offensively? Is it as simple as Donnie's back and things will naturally get better, or do you think they need to kind of switch up what they're doing at all?
I do think they have to switch up what they're doing, Steve, and I think maybe tonight's the night to do it for Nate George, right, back in Atlanta. For Syracuse to be the best version of themselves offensively, I think he's got to be the catalyst, and I think you would agree with me, and people that watch Syracuse would agree with me. He has not been what they thought they were going to get when he led the ACC in assists last year, and that's why you wanted him. You didn't necessarily need him to be a scorer, but you needed him to get the offense in a consistent rhythm, and I just feel like he has not done that to this point. That said, Damon Stoudemire, told us today George was a player who got better as the season went along, and tonight would be certainly a great night to kind of spark the offense and then not look back.
Yeah, no doubt. They definitely do need him to get better. On the flip side of things, Georgia Tech, a team that just beat BC, which again it's a conference win. It's their first Power 4 win of the season. They gave Duke all they could handle at Cameron. They gave Georgia a very close game. What do you make of this Georgia Tech team?
So I did that game on New Year's Eve at Cameron, Steve, and they would have won that game had Duke knocked on zone. Georgia Tech shot 68% in the first half of that game against Duke's man-to-man. So I would think that Syracuse would try and zone them at some points tonight because it takes them out of their rhythm. I think they have guys in Lamar Washington and Bai Dongo and Kwesi Reeves that are very effective when going against one-on-one. So, look, Duke's one of the most talented teams in all of college basketball, and they were the better team in that game. They just had 10 possessions when they went to zone where they went down the court and didn't score 10 straight times. And really, outside of that, they were the better team. So this is a very, very talented offensive Georgia Tech team. Obviously, the loss with Sela, the freshman big with the ankle sprain, is big for them. But they can score. I mean, you don't go to Cameron and put up the production they had with 79 points by accident. I mean, this is a talented team.
What are your thoughts on Kiyan Anthony so far and what he's provided for this team?
I think he's got to play more, Steve. You know, in that Clemson game that I was just watching back in particular, like, I think they could have used his ability to just get to the basket. You know, and I think he's a fearless freshman, unafraid. I just think he needs to be on the court a little more. At some point, it feels like Syracuse just doesn't play with the offensive urgency that I found myself during that Clemson game. Like, what are you guys waiting for? Just attack. And I think he's one of those players that can do it. And to me, 15 minutes against Clemson, just not enough time. I think you've got to play him probably more than 20 a night.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. Paulie and I were talking about the day after the Clemson game that we were surprised that he only got 15 minutes. Really didn't play much at all in that second half. Certainly not at all down the stretch of that game. Was not in the crunch time lineup. And for a team that's struggling to score the basketball at times, you want one of your better scorers on the floor. So we'll have to see if we see more of Kiyan tonight in that Syracuse lineup if he gets more minutes. With that being said, what do you think this game comes down to tonight? What are the big keys for both teams, I guess, in terms of tonight's game?
I think the biggest one is, can Dongo stay out of foul trouble and be effective? If Syracuse can get him into foul trouble, get him off the court, limit him. Georgia Tech is very depleted on the front court without Sela tonight. But if they allow Dongo to be an all-ACC caliber player, which he's capable of, then, I worry for Syracuse, because you don't want, if you're the Orange, to turn this into a game of who is going to score more points. It's a shootout. I think Syracuse needs to rely on their defense, limit Dongo, and then if you can get Dongo into foul trouble, then play through Donnie Freeman and William Kyle inside, because I don't think the Yellow Jackets stack up talent-wise at the forward spot with Sela out.
Jay, you look at this conference as a whole, and I think that the profile of this conference is certainly much better than it's been the last several years. It's been well documented. We've talked about on the show quite a bit that the last 4 years, the ACC's gotten either 4 or 5 bids. It seems like they're going to get more this year, right? They've got Duke and Carolina, Louisville, Virginia, all in great shape. And then you've got like this next tier, Clemson, Miami, NC State, all in this SMU.
Yep.
They're all in this next tier. Syracuse probably on the back end of that, right? They're 90th in the net. You've got all. What do you make of this next tier? We've got all these teams kind of jockeying for a few spots.
That's the word I've been using, Steve, is jockeying, because I think the month of January, it's kind of for the people that like watching golf, right? It's Saturday, it's moving day, right? Who's going to put themselves in position for Sunday? And I do feel like that's the month of January. Now, it's funny, I listened to your guys' opening segment because I like to get the pulse of the fan base. I heard you say, there's 4 lots and maybe a couple more teams get in. I think 9 teams get in.
Really?
9.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the conference is really, really strong. And you combine that with the SEC has not been as dominant and the Big Ten has not been as dominant. So I think you're going to get 9 teams in when it's all said and done. And I'll tell you why, too. In the past couple of years, like Duke and Louisville last year just ran through everybody. I think they're gettable. I think those teams are gettable, and they could lose 4 or 5 conference games. So that's 4 or 5 great wins that these other bubble teams will have. So I do think when it's all said and done, I've got 9 ACC teams in. Right now, Syracuse would be on the outside of that, but you're not trying to chase the 5th or 6th spot this year. You're just trying to chase, can you get that 8th or 9th spot? And I definitely think they're in that conversation. I was looking at it today knowing I'd talk to you guys. I think 14 teams in the ACC can look at the rest of the season and go, we're still in it. We're still in it. So, and the West Coast teams that we haven't even mentioned, Cal and Stanford, I'd put them on that list as if they can take care of business in January, they would play themselves into the bubble.
Yeah, I said that yesterday, and it went over like a lead balloon. But it's not easy. You got to win quad one games against Duke, Louisville, Virginia, and those teams. And it's one of the lower teams are going to do that, I would think.
Yes. Paul, you're exactly right. I think when it's all said and done, you're going to look at, did a Virginia Tech go and beat Carolina or Duke, or did a Syracuse beat Carolina or Duke? I just think those are the wins that are probably going to propel a team into the tournament, where in years past, no one's beaten Duke. They just rolled through the regular season. I do think the Blue Devils, having seen them twice this season, are just a little more gettable this year than they have been.
All right, as long as we got you, Jay, I do want to ask you a couple other questions, a football question and a lacrosse question. The football question, I know you had a chance to cover Vince Kehres quite a bit at Toledo and Syracuse hiring him to be their defensive coordinator. What can you tell us about the kind of coach, the kind of DC that Syracuse is getting in Vince Kehres?
Yeah, great question, Steve. And I've had the pleasure of covering Vince at least one game each of the last 5 seasons. He's been the defensive coordinator at Toledo, including when they went to Mississippi State on the road and didn't just beat them. They beat them by 28. So, and it was all defense. So Vince Kehres has done more with less of any defensive coordinator I've ever seen. They are not getting 4-star defensive players to Toledo, but he takes the under-recruited guys like an Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, who's an All-American at safety this past season for Toledo, or Quinyon Mitchell, a corner that was drafted by the Eagles in the first round, and he develops them. So I think Syracuse is really smart to go after a guy like Vince Kehres, because in this era of NIL, I don't think Syracuse is going to be able to pay SEC dollars for defensive players, right? But he's going to develop and get the max out of the players they can acquire. So I think it was a really, really smart hire by Fran Brown. Vince has become, a friend over the last few years, and I just love his approach to the game of football. He's very confident in what his schemes are. He doesn't really stray from them. They're going to stop the run, which is probably music to Syracuse fans' ears, because when I tuned into a couple of games this year, not a lot of run stopping going on. So I think they're going to be instantly competitive on defense, and he's going to get the maximum out of the players they pluck out of the portal here.
Certainly good to hear. And I mentioned lacrosse. The USA Today lacrosse poll dropped yesterday. Syracuse number 2 behind Maryland at number 1. We know Gary, he wants to play a tough schedule every year. This year, no different. It seems like they're going to take on a tournament team every single game this year. First and foremost, how excited are you for lacrosse season, which is just around the corner? And and how much better is the sport of college lacrosse when Syracuse is really good?
Well, it's the best. I think for college lacrosse to be at its best, you need Syracuse to be contending for championship weekends and national championships. We're only a month away, Steve. I'm fired up. I think we have to remember, it was a big step for Syracuse to get back to championship weekend. I know it was disappointing once they were there, right? But that is a step. It all can't happen overnight. And I think those players certainly left Gillette Stadium hungrier, having tasted it. And, there's no doubt that now the expectations can be, once again, winning a national championship with the roster they have. I think number 2 is right where they should be. And I do feel like that experience last year of getting there and experiencing that will pay dividends. And, who knows you don't know what the matchup's going to be. But I would say I would be very surprised if they are not in Charlottesville for a championship weekend again this season.
Should be a very fun spring. First things first, though, it is basketball season. Big one tonight, Cuse and Georgia Tech. Jay Alter will have the call on ACC Network. Jay, thanks so much for the time, and continued success to you, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, you guys are the best. Happy New Year. And as you mentioned lacrosse, big news where I live. Rick Beardsley's taken over the alma mater of my high school program. How about that?
Oh, is that right?
Connection there.
How about that?
Yeah, I'm a Darien High School alum, and he just got announced a couple of weeks ago as as the new head coach, coming in with a guy, Jeff Braymeyer, has been a legend for decades in Darien, and very small world. I thought when I left Central New York, I'd never have to hear the name Rick Beardsley again. No, I'm teasing. Rick is a great friend, and my first ever game for ESPN 3 while I was still a senior at Syracuse Rick was my analyst. So just funny that a decade later he's now coaching the local high school team. So,
that is awesome. He's good friend of ours, good friend of the program. That's great news. We'll have to reach out to Rick. We'll have to get him on.
I just want to know what he's having for lunch.
Yeah, we always ask him what he's having for lunch.
Meatball sub.
Right? Yes, that's something like that. That's usually the case. Jay, be well. We'll talk soon.
All right.